long term or short term, it is 24 months. But if we simply stop here, those doubts which you get, then what about other financial assets? Right? So there's nothing wrong in finishing it in 2 minutes. One quick revision of your financial assets. So if it is a security which is other than mutual fund, other than mutual fund units which are listed on recognized stock exchange, the criteria is 12 months. Okay, so listed shares or listed debentures on the stock exchange, the criteria is 12. This you know. Okay, units of UTI and any other equity oriented mutual fund. Units of UTI. Here when we use the word units of UTI, we do not bother whether it is equity or debt. We always say units of UTI. Always. And equity oriented, same 12 months. Zero coupon bond. Okay, notified companies, especially public sector undertakings, are issuing zero coupon bond. Always the criteria is 12 months. The taxman wants to encourage investment in these assets. So he is saying to call it long term, it's always 12. We don't bother whether it is listed or not. Okay, so this is the three things. Now the amendment which has come, unlisted shares. Unlisted shares, it is 24 months. Earlier it was 36. Now they made it 24. 36 became 24. But I didn't use the word unlisted security. I use the word unlisted shares. That means you still have the next one. What is the next one? Unlisted debentures or securities or a debt-oriented fund, mutual fund, debt-oriented mutual fund, or any other asset like land, building, gold, diamonds, etc. 36 months. So now along with the amendment, we also revised others. So earlier shares were here, from here it went here. From 36 it went to 20. Over everyone? Next one. Can I clean this? Okay. So you know about sovereign gold bond and the gold monetization scheme. Everywhere the word is gold, but both the schemes are different. Sovereign gold bond. What is this? Earlier there were gold bonds in 99, paper gold. Now it is gold bonds, sovereign gold bonds under 2015 scheme. Okay, so when you're giving, let's say 1 lakh rupees, it is as good as you have purchased gold, so much physical quantity, let's say 50 grams, 30 grams, so much of gold value worth is written physically. Tomorrow on redemption, you can enjoy that gold irrespective of the price fluctuations. And these gold bonds carry interest also. This is one story. Paper gold it is called. No headache of keeping it physically somewhere, and it enjoys lot of tax benefits. And what was that gold monetization scheme, the utter flop scheme? What was that scheme? All the households in India bring your ornaments, melt it in the bank, okay, and take away the gems, stones, pearls, whatever is attached to it, that you take. That gold which is there, that gold will be converted into a bar kind of thing. To check the purity, they have to melt it. And whatever is melted will be credited to your account. That was the monetization scheme. So obviously, what will be the reaction of women like us? That antique, jewelry set which was gifted by my mother, how can I melt it? That was a disadvantage why the scheme didn't work. The melting problem created all the damage. So people who wanted to go to the bank, they thought they'll keep that set the way it is. No. But under the monetization scheme, they said we'll melt it down. That's why the scheme became a flop. But still many people have subscribed to it, and there are provisions for to handle that scheme. So when they melted the physical gold, they issued deposit certificate for that. So that deposit certificate, it's like a debt instrument. So what are the tax consequences? Is it a capital asset? What about the interest on it? Tomorrow if there is a redemption, do I need to pay tax on it? These issues are answered by Budget 2016, Finance Act 2016. So this will clean it up. So let us see now. Sovereign gold bond, gold monetization scheme. Sovereign gold bond held by individual, held by others. Here we don't care who it is. Okay, let's see now. First one, interest income. Interest income. Okay, on the gold bond 2015, sovereign gold bond 2015, interest income is getting taxed. Unfortunately, they have not given any exemption under section 10 subsection 15. But under gold monetization scheme, it is exempt. So flop scheme will have more tax advantages. They attract us with some tax chocolates. So it's like that. Exempt. Second one. Whether it is a capital asset. Who's going to answer this? Whether it's a capital asset, which section will guide us? Section 2, subsection 14. And in that section 2, subsection 14, we know 4 things are not capital assets, if you remember. Stock in trade, personal effect, rural agricultural land, and gold bonds. Now there we use the word gold bond, but it is not having etc. in it. It is specified which gold bond we are talking about. So they are saying it is nothing but the gold bond which was issued in 99, and it is the deposit certificates which are given to you under gold monetization scheme. So in the definition of capital asset, when you are talking about exclusions, it is not every gold bond. It is the old one, gold bond 99, and it is exclusion. The deposit certificate which is given under gold monetization scheme. So that means this are capital assets. Sovereign gold bond under 2015 scheme have not been excluded from the definition of capital asset. They are not excluded. Then what is excluded? Only deposit certificate. So what does this know? Deposit certificate issued under gold monetization scheme is excluded from capital asset under section 2 subsection 14. Means what? They don't want to tax you. By saying it is not a capital asset, they are not watching it, they are not planning to tax you. But this they are watching. There is no exclusion here. Yes, it's a capital asset. Third one. How about capital gain? How about capital gain? Capital gain can arise in 2 situations. One is redemption, when other one is others. What's the difference between the 2, redemption and others? Up to the maturity you have kept and you got it redeemed. You got some gain. Second one, you don't have time for 3 years, 5 years. There's an emergency. You have transferred. These can be transferred. Okay, these are instruments. So you have transferred to somebody even before the maturity. You didn't wait till redemption. So if that is the case, If it is an individual, it is exempt under section 47. That means, see what they are doing. First place they said it's a capital asset. So no need to panic. Second place, if this bond is held by an individual and he is waiting till redemption, we will give you exemption. So there is a corresponding amendment in 47. Guess what is that one line? Any gold bond transferred by an individual on redemption is exempt. But when I bifurcated like others, this is not there for others. Taxable. Others are not going to enjoy. Others will have to pay tax on it even if they are waiting till redemption. Only individuals are getting benefit. Anybody who is not waiting till redemption, taxable, taxable. Anybody who is not waiting till redemption is taxable. Now you should get one doubt when I have written the word taxable. What one is this? It's a bond. How do we decide if it is long or short? 36 months is the criteria. If it is a long-term capital asset, will I get the benefit of indexation? There you have to refer to the proviso. Okay, third proviso talks about the following is not eligible for indexation. One line bonds and debentures are never indexed even if they are long-term. But that proviso has one exception also. How to read that proviso? Bonds and debentures are not eligible for indexation except capital indexed bonds and sovereign gold bonds issued by government. So now every bond and debenture is not excluded. That means good news is if LTCA index it, when we have written the word taxable, that means these sovereign gold bonds are eligible for the benefit of indexation. It's not excluded. Bonds and debentures are not eligible except the following: capital index bonds and sovereign gold bonds, because it is issued by government, they want to give the benefit of indexation. So indexing. Come here. Do we need to bother about this? Yes, it's not a capital asset. When it's not a capital asset, it is obvious. It is exempt. Okay, so you, after your exams, maybe you can guide your mom whether she should go with sovereign gold bonds or not. Okay, so based on this chat, you can guide her. Don't want her? We always like physical gold. I don't know what craze we have. Over, the table is over. What were the two amendments from the table? In the definition of capital asset, exclusion. Which exclusion has come? Deposit certificates under gold monetization scheme. Sovereign gold bond is not excluded. Okay, they can follow one harmony, no, but they will not do it. Okay, so they kept it yes, but they are asking us to go to 47. There is some good news for you. What is that 47? If the person is an individual and he waited till redemption, then he will be exempt. Any other person is getting taxed. So this is what they are telling us. Okay, thank God we finished this. So now come to the next one. Indexation benefit is available for sovereign gold bonds. Okay, please write the next one. Put the heading fourth proviso to section 48. Fourth proviso to section 48. Right up. Applicable for non-resident. Applicable for non-resident. Okay, what is this story? Write down gain on rupee appreciation. Gain on rupee appreciation against foreign currency at the time of redemption of rupee denominated bond. At the time of redemption of rupee denominated bond of Indian company shall be ignored for the purpose of computation of full value of consideration. Condition. Write down condition. Okay, exemption is not available if rupee denominated bond is transferred before maturity. Note, if there is a loss due to rupee depreciation, then it shall be allowed as capital loss. Okay, now see, you have to look at it carefully. I don't know how many of you all remember your TDS chapter. We said in TDS chapter, if you remember, the borrower is raising foreign currency loan, rupee denominated bonds. When he is paying interest to the non-resident, he is supposed to deduct TDS at the rate of 5%. There the link is coming from. So from TDS you might have heard, so that's why we thought bring it here. And what was the difference between foreign currency loan and rupee denominated? Foreign currency loan, who bears the exchange risk? The borrower. I borrowed in dollars, I have to repay in dollars. So if there is exchange fluctuation, I have to bear the loss. But in rupee denominated bond, the lender, the one who invested, the non-resident, he takes care of exchange risk because he is investing in a rupee denominated bond. That means entire exchange fluctuation should be borne by the investor, the non-resident. So now taxman is thinking that this rupee denominated bond, there the investor is suffering with exchange risk, let us give him some tax relief. Okay, this never happened till last year. Till last year, if there was a gain, entire gain was getting taxed. Now the gain is split. We are trying to find out if the gain is because of exchange risk, we are not going to tax it. And can you just give one line? This is a bond, it's a debt instrument. So irrespective of exchange fluctuation, assume it is getting redeemed at par. Okay, 100 is the size of the bond, 100 is getting redeemed. We don't have to worry about taxing the gain. Why? Because the redemption happened at par. Even if the person got something more, that is for sure because of the exchange rate. So what is this proviso telling? If you make some gain because of exchange fluctuation and the redemption is at par, then we're not going to tax you at all. Then what situation may get taxed? If the redemption is at premium problem will come. So I think it can be understood only with an example. Please write down. Okay, BB Limited, an Indian company. BB Limited, an Indian company, issued RDB, rupee denominated bond. Issued RDB at 10,000 rupees per bond. 10,000 rupees per bond. On 14th of February 2016. On 14th of February 2016. The bonds are redeemed. The bonds are redeemed on 13th Jan 2017. Okay, 13th Jan 2017. Non-resident subscribed to 100 bonds. Non-resident subscribed to 100 bonds. Okay, in foreign currency. In foreign currency. Exchange rate on 14th of Feb 2016. 14th of Feb 2016 is 70. On 13th Jan 2017, 13th Jan 2017, it is 62. Okay, 62. Chalo, write down cost of acquisition in foreign currency. So amendment class, I guess you don't bring calculator? There? Okay, I'll help you. Cost of acquisition in foreign currency. So this person is buying how many bonds? We said 100 bonds. 100 bonds. Okay. $14,285. In dollars it is coming to 14,285. Phone is there, no, remove no. 14,000, how much? 285. Is it coming? $14,285. Okay, Indian currency is 10,000. In dollars we want $14,285. Okay, next line. Redemption price in foreign currency. Redemption price in foreign currency. It is redeemed at par. So redemption price in foreign currency $16,129 you should get. 16,129. Is it coming? 16,129. Okay, write down. Gain is equal to the difference $1848. $1848. Gain is equal to $1848. Okay. Shall we write down now? This is a gain because of what? Appreciation in rupee. You agree there is an appreciation. When the bond was invested, $1 was worth 70 rupees. Now dollar became cheap. Now 62, we've written 62. $1 you can buy at 62. That means if dollar is becoming cheap, rupee is appreciating. So because of appreciation in rupee, who made the gain? That non-resident. So what are we telling to the non-resident? Next line, please write down. The gain is arising. The gain is arising on account of The gain is arising on account of appreciation in rupee. The gain is arising on account of appreciation of rupee. As per fourth proviso to section 48, as per fourth proviso to section 48, such gain is not taxable. Why it is not taxable? It is not forming part of sale consideration. It shall not be taken. So that means you will not end up paying tax on it. But now change the example. Write down. Suppose in the above example, the bonds are redeemed at, suppose in the above example, the bonds are redeemed at 10% premium. 10% premium. So that is coming to how much? 11,000 per bond. Face value is 10,000. This is coming to 11,000 per bond. Now you have to break the gain into two parts. The gain which is because of rupee appreciation and the gain which is because of the premium. The premium gain is getting taxed, but the rupee appreciation will not get taxed. Numbers you can check at home. I will help you. Just copy it. Concept is important. Calculation is okay. Can be done by you later. Time constraint is there, no? So redemption price. Redemption price $17,741. Cost of acquisition remains the same. Total gain is 3456. This is to be split into two parts. 1612 and 1843. See, rupee appreciation is always calculated on that original amount of investment. You invested 10,000, you're getting back your 10,000. So rupee appreciation on 10, this is to be freezed. This will never change. What will change is this balancing figure. Out of the total gain, the balancing figure is nothing but short-term capital gain because of premium. So after this is based on 1,000 and 1,000. Rupee appreciation on original amount invested by you. It is not with respect to what you are getting. Right? You invested at par. So on that amount, what is the rupee appreciation? That is exempt. But anything over and above that is getting taxed. And because of the period, we are calling it short-term capital gain. Okay, but I suggest you should go back home and interlink this with what? First proviso to section 48. First proviso to section 48. Do you remember first proviso to 48? What was that? Conversion and reconversion. Yeah. Cost of acquisition, everything is based on that average telegraphic rate, buying and selling, average of it. Okay, and we said what were the points? As a non-resident has invested in shares or debentures in foreign currency. That method of conversion and reconversion is there. That will apply even for rupee denominated bond. So you have to give a combined reading of first proviso with fourth proviso. The example which we did was standalone independent example on fourth proviso. Go back home and interlink it with first proviso. First proviso, there is no amendment. But I am saying that applies even in this case, rupee denominated bond. So write a note, refer first proviso to section 48, conversion, reconversion. Because non-resident investing in shares and debentures in foreign currency is subject to first proviso. Chalo, now last, see the next one. 47. There are 3 amendments in section 47. 3 amendments in section 47. What are those 3 amendments? Let us see. Exemptions under section 47. Or one you already know. Redemption. Redemption by individual of sovereign gold bond. Okay. 47. This one. This we already finished. Second one. 47. Conversion of company to LLP. Next one. Okay, 3 things. Okay, let us see now. What is this conversion of company to LLP? Business reorganization. What if we study business reorganization? In the scheme of converting a company to LLP, transfer of capital assets under section 47 is exempt. However, condition number 1, all assets and liabilities should be transferred. Condition number 2, all the shareholders should become partners in. Their stake should be more than 50% for 5 years. And the ratio should be same. Shareholding pattern that should continue. One line you remember. Which company can become LLP? Small company. What was the definition of small company? In the last 3 years, not even once, your turnover should have been more than 60 lakhs. Because from organized sector you are shifting to unorganized. LLP compliances are less, company compliances are more. So who can convert? Unlisted companies, turnover is less than 60 lakhs, you can convert. Now what happened is, government noticed that there are so many companies which have huge asset base. If you see their balance sheet, is in crores of rupees. But if you ask them their turnover, it is in lakhs of rupees. So mismatch is happening. Turnover wise they are small. Balance sheet wise they are very big. So now a new condition has come. Along with turnover, in the last 3 years, your assets should not be more than 5 crores. This is one new word which has come. What is it? Turnover should be less than 60 lakhs in all the last 3 years. Along with that, your assets should also not be more than 5 crores. Asset size should be less than 5 crores. So this point has come. Value of total assets in books of accounts of the company in any 3 PYs preceding the PY of conversion shall not exceed 5 crores. 5. Shall not exceed 5 crores. Old plus new, both will apply. Turnover should be less than 60 lakhs. They have not replaced anything. Along with turnover, they added something. Both should satisfy. Asset should be less, turnover should be less. Okay, now if you remember this one, Consolidation of Mutual Fund, Finance Act 2015 initiated. Okay, yes, what did they say? Mutual funds, every festival, a new name is coming. Like that, so many schemes they have introduced. For SEBI and government to monitor, it is becoming a problem. So they asked merger of schemes. So many schemes got merged. Earlier also the investor is Mr. A. Today also he is the investor Mr. A. Then what happened? Earlier he was a holder of Kotak Classic. Now it became Kotak 50. Something, name has changed. Okay, merger of schemes, merger of schemes. So Finance Act 2015 said in this consolidation process, if the investor is surrendering his units of one scheme and getting the units of another scheme, he is exempt. Then what is the role of Finance Act 2016? Okay, last year they didn't realize that within the scheme also there are so many different plans. Growth plans are there, dividend plans are there. So when the plan is changing, element of gain can be there. So that's why they have come up with some amendment. So what is the story of mutual fund? Let's understand now, quickly. So always our amendments come in episodes. Episode 1 came last year, episode 2 came this year. So challenging for the government. Students also are. You take a bigger challenge. You say next 10 years down the line, I will introduce the amended law. Possible? Yes, why study amendments? Bring amendments to that. So consolidation of one scheme with another scheme. This is Finance Act 2015. Next one. One plan of a scheme with another plan of same scheme. This is 2016. Here it is scheme with scheme, there it is plan with plan under a scheme. Okay, so now we have to check. By plans we mean growth plans, dividend plan, etc. Growth, dividend, etc. In this you heard equity oriented A, equity oriented B became equity oriented C. Exempt under 47. Right? Equity oriented A, equity oriented B became debt oriented C. He said no 47. Right? Then we said debt is becoming debt. So this story you heard already. This is exempt. Exempt under 47. So it should be same. This example is just a revision. It should be same. Equity with equity, debt with debt only. It should not be a combination. Equity plus debt becoming some equity. No. Risk is changing, return is changing. We can't give you any exemption. Because see, remember, transfer in capital gains chapter includes exchange also. You are the owner, but you have exchanged. You have exchanged preference with equity, like that exchange also comes. So you are doing exchange. So based on the exchange, we can tax your gains. This is what they are saying. So exemption is only when it's the same scheme. Whenever the scheme is changing, there is no exemption. Then what about this one? First finish copying this, then we'll write something here. Same scheme. Yes, debt and debt should become debt. Equity, debt becoming equity, no. This one also no. 16 but with a new point. This story is not replaced but a new point got added. And what is the new point which got added? They've added the word plan in a scheme. Okay, plan in a scheme with another plan. So please write down. Kotak, example you write. Kotak Classic Equity. Kotak Classic Equity Oriented Scheme. Classic Equity Oriented Scheme is merged with Kotak 50 plus equity oriented scheme. Okay, then you write down the classic scheme has a growth plan, whereas the 50 plus scheme has a dividend plan. Okay, please write down. As both the schemes are equity oriented, if the growth plan is merged with dividend plan, capital gain is exempt. Okay, if the units are later sold, it will be taxable. And what will be the cost of acquisition? Deemed cost. Deemed cost means what? I didn't buy the new one. I had bought the old one. The old one got merged with new one. New one I'm selling. When I'm selling the new one, the cost of the new one is the cost of the old one. Deemed cost. So see, this one is also exempt. This one is also exempt. Here they only emphasized on the word one scheme with another scheme. This is scheme A, scheme B. Both are belonging to equity, and it got converted into another one. Consolidation of small schemes. We simply use the word one scheme merging with another scheme will be exempt. But if you see wherever I have put a cross mark, what happened there? Equity is becoming debt, or equity and debt is becoming equity. Then they are saying we can't give you exemption. Now to this, what got added by 2016 is within the equity scheme also plans are also getting merged. So when plans are getting merged, can we give them exemption? Yes, this one is also talking about. One plan of a scheme with another plan of the same scheme will also be exempt. This is what they want us to understand under 47. So by this, which story got over? 47 is over. Now the next amendment is 49 subsection 5. Deemed cost of acquisition. See, what is this amendment? This is because of the IDS scheme which has come. Okay, let's see now. 49 subsection 5. Cost of acquisition of assets declared under IDS 2016, Income Declaration Scheme 2016. Okay, done everyone. So you might be aware that under the scheme, when you have assets which were acquired by your black money, you can offer them for taxability. So what did we do? They said, let's say Mr. A, he has a flat which he had acquired in 2013 with his black money for 2 crores. So he is coming forward and offering this under IDS scheme. So under IDS scheme, when he has opted, we asked him to look at the fair market value on 1st June 2016. The scheme became effective from 1st June till September. Then but we have to see the fair market value on 1st June. So it's 3 crores. So we took tax from him. Okay, we took tax which is coming to effectively 45% under the name 30 plus penalty plus surcharge, Krishi Kanya, whatever you call it. Effectively it is 45%. So 45% on 3 crores was paid by him under the IDS scheme. Story over. Now assume next year 17-18 this flat is sold for 5 crores. Okay, this is the issue. Now normally we understand cost of acquisition is amount paid by you. So how much did you pay? 2 crores. But if I simply say cost is 2 crores, what will happen? Double taxation will happen. Because even though the asset was bought by you for 2 crores, under this deemed income concept, under IDS concept, you were already taxed on the basis of fair market value. So 3 crores was already taxed for you. So this 3 crores will now take the character of cost of acquisition. So now under section 49 subsection 5, deemed cost of acquisition is equal to fair market value as on 1st June 2016. That is one line. So if you are solving a problem on IDS, they may give, and all the related things are penalties is like the very important chapter for you. Because all penalties are there, and best thing is we can't remember. When you can't remember, luckily we have amendments in it. Imagine the fate of next day 10 students. Amendments are not very important for them. They have to study poor penalties chapter. At least you can focus on the amendments. Okay, so this is there. One line, 49 subsection 5. So what does this say? IDS provides an opportunity to persons to declare their undisclosed income and pay tax at 45% of fair market value. And this fair market value will become your cost of acquisition in future. So they may design a question comprehensive problem, interlinking on IDS, interlinking with penalties, interlinking with 49.5, then you should be able to answer that. Okay, now do you remember 50C? 50C. Acha, nice section of IPCC as well as, okay, fine. 50C has to be read along with 43CA. Okay, 43CA is what? When the land and building is stock in trade. 50C is when the land and building is capital asset. Okay. All the provisions are same. 43C and 50C. All are same except one. What are same? First of all, what are same? Whenever you show consideration, who? Either 50C fellow seller or 43CA that builder. Both of them, whether it's PGBP chapter or capital gains chapter, whenever the seller says, my consideration is less than stamp duty authority's value, to both of them, both the sections are telling what? We will assume the consideration is stamp duty value and we will tax capital gains or business income accordingly. We ignore your consideration. This is common both the places. Second point which is common in both the places, whenever you are not happy with this section, you can request it for reference to valuation office. 50C is also telling, 43CA is also saying. Request to valuation office. What are the two conditions? First of all, you should claim that fair market value is much lesser than stamp duty value. We are not doing any tax evasion. Second one, you should not have disputed that stamp duty value with the revenue officer, division revenue officers, all those people you should not dispute. If the dispute is pending, you go there. Whenever the dispute is not there, we can refer it to valuation officer. Valuation officer comes with a number, one new value. The new value or stamp duty value, whichever is lower, will apply. This also same. Then what is missing? What is missing? One proviso is missing, huh? It is there at one place, it is not there at another place. Yes, exactly. So see this now. Land building, when it is a capital asset, we say 50C. When it is stock in trade, we say 43C. Here, one special point was there. As on the date of agreement, stamp duty value is 50 lakhs. As on the date of registration, stamp duty value is 70 lakhs. Possible? Okay, huge number, I make it 60. Okay. Why this is common? Apartments, builders are all selling. What do? Even before digging that cellar work, they make an advertisement. Come and do a pre-booking. Okay, buy a flat, looking at the plan, looking at the photos, future photos. Present good, nothing is there. Okay, based on future photographs, 3 years down the line when the building is ready, that time they'll sell it to you. Right now you can do a booking. You can enter into an agreement, you can pay one small amount, and 3 years later flat will be given to you. This is what happens. So most of the case there is a time lapse between the date of agreement and the date of registration. Date of agreement happened 3 years back, registration happened now. When the property is ready, they will give us occupation. When we pay full amount, they will give us occupation and the property will be registered in our name. So when this kind of situation is happening, this section gave a relief to the seller. What relief was? You can take the old stamp duty value if you satisfy one condition. What is that? How do I trust you? How do I trust you that agreement was there? Backdated papers anybody can make. So how do I trust you? Yes, some part of the consideration should have been received by check on or before the date of agreement. This relief was here. It was not here. Here, when it comes to 50C, we should always take stamp duty value as on the date of registration. Why that relief was missing here? Because normally they thought that for 50C we don't need to address this issue. 50C is what? We are selling our capital asset. It is very rare that one person will enter into agreement to sell his building and after 3 years, 2 years he will sell his building. It's very rare. So maybe 50C never felt that requirement of giving this benefit. But what was happening? Many judgments were taking place under 50C route where they were giving stamp duty value as on the date of agreement. That means practically 50C cases were also suffering with this problem. When can this happen? In our relative's case, I would like to share with you. So what happened? Aunt has sold her house to her niece. Okay. So what happened in this case is agreement was entered, but transfer registration was not done because the niece has requested that she can pay the consideration after 5 years. She's working, she can't pay 50 lakhs right now. So she took a time with her relative to pay after 5 years. See, agreement is entered and consideration is decided, but payment and all is happening later, and a registration will take place only after she pays everything. So even for capital assets, there are some cases where agreement and registration, there is a time gap. And these issues were pending in litigation with the court. They want the old stamp duty value. They don't want on the basis of new stamp duty value. So why to take it to litigation? So better add one amendment. What is that amendment? Same point here. What is it? Same point. Even in 50C, whenever stamp duty value as on the date of agreement is different, as on the date of registration is different, and you want to take this one, the older one, we will give you, provided you satisfy that condition. What is that condition? Some part should have been received on or before the date of agreement. So these points have come here. Now what question you can expect on 50C? Earlier we used to ignore the old stamp duty value. We used to take the latest one and finish 50C problem. Now you can take stamp duty value as on the date of agreement if some consideration was paid by check. So in solving 50C problem, be careful which stamp duty value to pick up. That is the amendment, right? C does not provide any relief where seller has entered into agreement to sell much before the actual date of transfer and sale consideration was fixed in the agreement. Transfer is happening 5 years later whenever money was paid, but sale consideration was fixed long back. So therefore they amended 50C. Now 50C in total looks like 43C. Okay, thank God. Chalo, now last two amendments in capital gains. What are they? 54EE and 54GB. 54GB was dying this year, so they have renewed its life. So DD revision is over, at least some part. You were waiting, let amendments get over, then we'll start studying. Huh? Hey, that's a long day, no? Psychologically, students feel we can finish off 2 to 3 subjects instead of doing DT. Yeah? That's why they keep postponing it. Yeah, that is also true. Chalo, so now Startup India Action Plan. Startup India Action Plan. This is what India is on. And really they are very aggressive. See, this T-Hub is there, no? T-Hub. There also they are giving opportunities to practicing chartered accountants, saying that the new entrepreneurs who are coming to T-Hub do 3 incorporations for free. Okay, we have to do 3 incorporations for free, all the T-Hub entrepreneurs. Then from 4th onwards we can charge. At least we are getting some opportunity. Hundreds of entrepreneurs are coming. So they are encouraging from left and right. Entrepreneurship is the theme. Okay, so let's see what is the theme. So under the Startup India, we have 54EE and we have 54GB. Okay, before we address these 2 sections, we will study in deductions chapter 80 IAC. 80 IAC. What is that 80 IAC? Now look at it very carefully. Okay, this individual or HUF who sold his land and building to incorporated an ex-private limited. Okay, entrepreneurship. So we are addressing both of them. This fellow who sold his land and building, for him we will give capital gain exemption. And the company which has started now, we are giving them 100% deduction for 3 years. The company is going to earn profits. Those profits, startup companies' profits are exempt for 3 years. We will give them a deduction 3 out of 5. And the investor who started that company, for him his capital gains are exempt. So this is the new link which has come now. The company is also enjoying a deduction and the investor also got capital gain exemption. Okay, then now what is the role of this section? Okay, this one you have to study in detail. There are a lot of things to study. What is the role of this section? If you remember EC, okay, what was EC? Whenever you have long-term capital gain, go and buy NHAI bonds, REC bonds. Now they are saying whenever you have long-term capital gain, go and buy the units. Units of what? Of a fund. What fund is this? A fund which will fund startups. Okay, normally we know equity linked saving scheme, mutual fund, Rajiv Gandhi equity saving scheme. Basically, when you don't have the courage to start your own company, you go and put money here. Because this is little less risky. Here, what is the risk? Your own project, your own money. Maybe your ability to judge the risk and return is little affected here. Here, your money is in little safer hands. There is a fund run by experienced, qualified people. The job of this fund is to evaluate various startup companies and put your money there. So when you're not very intelligent, this is a safer route. No, I am very intelligent, I will start my own company, this you go ahead. So in this case, this is just like a mutual fund. You're subscribing to the units of this fund, but this fund is going to fund various startups. So will it look like a venture capital fund? We do not know. This is to be notified by the government whether it will be called a social fund or an alternative investment fund or a venture capital fund. What is the name of that? We have to see. Right now if you are searching, you are not getting proper names because it's a new thing. Maybe it is still in the pipeline of formation. It is not yet publicly announced. We have to wait and watch. They are using the word specified notified fund. So let's see now what is the theme. But points are same. What do you mean by points are same? Let's read them. 54 EE. So what are the common points? SC. Okay, who should be investing? We are doing 54 EE first. Any person. This is the best part. That means we are not just addressing individual and HUF, we are also addressing companies. We are addressing partnership firms. When you have surplus money, you can go and buy the units of a fund. Any person. Okay, what is the asset transferred by them? You can guess this from 54 EC. What is it? Any long-term capitalist. Any NTCA. But the GB that we are going to read, GB is talking about selling off land and building and starting a company. But here it is any NTCA. Okay, what should be the new asset to buy? What is the new asset to buy? Units of fund. Notified. Okay, notified. Some fund which is going to fund the startups. What is the time limit? They should have said same as 54 EC. What is 54 EC? From the date of transfer within 6 months or before the due date of filing return, whichever is earlier. They will not do that now. So they said date of transfer plus 6 months. But even though the due date of filing return is missing, it is understood. Deemed to be understood. Why? CGS concept will not be there. Capital gain account scheme is not there. These units and bonds are readily available in the market. So you don't have to block your money like the way we do for construction. Block it and then use. So when CGS concept is not there, obviously if they are giving 6 months time, this should happen before the due date of filing return. Otherwise it becomes a problem. So it's not clearly given. Maybe they have omitted. It is understood, we can see. Maximum exemption, you can guess from EC. Yes. Same 50 lakhs has come here. Okay, 50 lakhs. But do you don't know how to interpret this 50 lakhs? How? Same year, next year, both the years. In total, 50 lakhs. Okay. In addition to that, add this also in your mind. In 1617, I sold gold, I sold land, building, shares. EC or double E. EC or double E both are same. That is bonds, NHI, these are units, same type. So do not be under the impression that for each capital asset sold by me, for every capital asset I put 50, 50, 50. During the year when I have sold 3, with respect to all these 3, the maximum exemption is 50 lakhs. Next year again I will sell again 50 lakhs. This is not once in a lifetime. Every time you keep selling, we will give you 50 lakhs. But in this year I sold 3 assets. Then for each asset it is not 50. All 3 put together it is 50. And I will plan smartly. Before 31st March I will buy. After 31st March, but before the due date of filing return I will buy. Whenever you want. Same PY plus next PY or both up to the due date of filing return. It shall not exceed 50 lakhs. Okay, so this is what you have to remember. Same PY or next PY or both the PYs put together, it shall not cross 50 lakhs. That point has come. What should be the last condition that we have to discuss? Holding period. Right? So holding period, next month. Holding period. What to discuss in holding period? Units should not be transferred. Units should not be transferred. Should not be transferred for 3 years. 3 years. GB mate is 5 years. This is double E. Double E mate is 3 years. And if you sell within 3 years, what are the consequences? LTCG earlier exempt, now taxable. Now taxable. Okay. And because we are doing this and also the next section, you should remember this point. Can I clean this up? Everyone?